Oh, welcome back to Carl and Rick Talk Risk. Hey, Rick, how are you?
I am unbelievable. How are you,
Excellent.
Carl?
I'm great. I shaved off some of my beard, trying to remember what my face looks like. My wife tells me she sees more facial expressions and she doesn't like it. So
You also had your ears lowered too, right?
I know. That's right.
Holy smokes.
It's hard getting used to it after a while.
Of course, regular, viewers will see that I've also, had my hair specially done for today. So,
we're all about the audience, right, Rick? I mean, presentable, fashionable. What can we say? Um, well, Rick, as many of the viewers will know, we work together on through PRMIA's Intelligent Risk publication quarterly, where I co-edit, and you often write really interesting articles for us. And in the upcoming November issue, you're going to be the capstone writer. Um, I think it'd be very interesting to know, what do you plan to write about?
well, I want to write about something that I've been passionate about for a long time, and that is basically uh, uh, that risk frameworks are evil. Okay. Um, a lot of organizations use risk frameworks. And just let me say up front, yes, absolutely, risk frameworks have a place. I will also say, for those who are about to call me a hypocrite, yes, I have written several books on risk management. And in those books, I do present risk frameworks, okay, or suggest risk frameworks. I would like to think that in my books, I talk more about the thinking behind risk frameworks than the actual risk frameworks themselves. Uh, but in essence, I think that risk frameworks are evil. And the number one reason for that is if you adopt a framework, such as COSO or ISO 31000 or whatever from your favorite consultant that you go to, the number one thing is you have automatically stopped thinking. And risk management, if nothing else, is about thinking. So the very first thing, or the main reason why I think that risk frameworks are evil is people automatically stop thinking about them. Uh, Today we do not have time to go through all my criticisms of risk frameworks, but if you go away with nothing, it's that a risk framework, it seems so handy. It's a
Mm.
tool. You know, it's a Swiss Army knife. It basically tells you how to do risk management. That's the mindset that people use risk frameworks for, and that, in my opinion, is very wrong.
Yeah.
Very wrong.
And Rick, just to lay it out there, I've also written parts and of risk policies, standards, parts of risk frameworks, and been part of those conversations. Not as much as you, I'm sure, but um, I have seen them, and I've seen both sides where it's more organic. It's laying down on paper what we do already, and it's trying to put a structure around it. I think that's fairly good. But then I know exactly what you're talking about. You get in a consultant, a team of consultants, they hobble something together from other organizations which have nothing to do with you, and they're like, here you go, good risk framework, and then the next year you're revising it, and the next year, and it's not fit for purpose at all. Do you draw a similar distinction?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Perhaps I should go back. I'm old, okay, and one of my early employers is I was asked to write commentary for this large multinational bank for Basel. Okay, and in other words, their contribution to Basel and So I was quite involved in the early, some of the early drafts of Basel, albeit not in terms of writing, but in commenting on it and providing commentary for my organization, or part of the commentary for my organization. And I was just flabbergasted in that these risk frameworks, even something as important and critical as the Basel Accords, are much more of a political tool than they are a risk management tool. And and you know, to put things in context, I love sausages, and I know that you should never, ever, ever, look into how a sausage is made. But sometimes you have to appreciate how the sausage is made to realize that uh, how you should utilize the sausage. So I utilize sausage when I want a nice guilty treat. I don't utilize sausage when I want, a healthy snack. Okay. And it's that exact same thing with risk frameworks is unless you understand the reasoning behind why the framework is as it is, unless you understand the thought processes, uh, unless you understand how it fits or does not fit with your organization, you're bound to wind up eating sausages because you're trying to be health conscious,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
it shouldn't work that way.
Yeah. One other thing I've noticed is that a risk framework. T a lot of people want more and more detail out of it. Well, what do we do in this circumstance? And what do we do if this happens? And it starts as a framework, and then it gets pulled deeper and deeper into the weeds. And you're telling people what to do in certain situations. And I think that's where it loses a lot of its effectiveness because it takes decision-making power out of people's hands and gives you a procedure document. And that's not what a framework is, right? A framework is high level, more principle based, and it gives you limits to act within, but with autonomy, right?
Yeah. And again, I've got a whole list, and I could almost list them off here. I'll save something for the article. In fact, even in the
Yep.
article, I won't be able to cram them all in. But the other thing is a risk framework, particularly if you get it off the shelf. Okay, so if you
Yeah.
say, we're going to do a few tweaks to COSO, or we're going to do a few tweaks to ISO or Basel or whatever framework you want to use, is uh, you lose the responsibility, you lose the accountability.
Yeah.
Um, and what happens because of that is it becomes a box ticking exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you know, uh, I teach an enterprise risk management course, at the graduate level in business school. And yes, I do teach the usual suspects. Um, yeah, boy, we might get some reader hate mail. Uh, email about this, but man, if anyone who is not extremely high or extremely drunk can actually say with a straight face that they actually know how to implement COSO, then I haven't met that person yet. Well,
Mm.
I did once, but unfortunately they were institutionalized in a straitjacket. Okay. Um, I mean, now perhaps COSO is taking to heart what we're saying, and they're creating something that is so vague and so airy fairy and up in the world to everybody, and with the ribbon and whatnot,
Yeah.
that you can find whatever golden brick road to whatever destination you want. But you know, every risk manager I talk to, every serious risk manager I talk to says, implementing one of the major frameworks is going to take 3 times as long and cost 3 times as much.
Mm.
to get you halfway there than you ever dreamed of in your worst forecasts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're never going to get there. Okay.
Yeah.
Those of you of a certain age might remember socks. Holy smokes.
Right.
Which, of course, was uh, did any organization actually claim to have a successful implementation and experience with SOX? Okay, which of course, COSO is, the stepchild or whatever you want to label it. Um, the lack of thinking, the lack of responsibility. The third major thing is the lack of flexibility.
Hmm.
Because although you start with the framework and you say it's supposed to be a living document, and we're going to keep it top level like you recommend. Uh, you know, uh, let's be honest. Organizations and employees today want a definitive yes, no answer
Yeah.
for every decision that they want to make. The answer maybe is not acceptable when it comes to risk management. Now, I got to preface though. Um, I believe that the answer maybe should always be the answer in risk management.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
but the reality is it's not, and so having a risk framework encourages a rigid line, a rigid way, or rigid methodology, or rigid algorithm even
Yeah.
of getting to a black, white, seven significant figures quantitative answer that becomes completely black, white, green, red,
Yeah.
whatever symbolism that you want to use, go, no go.
Yeah.
And that is not risk management.
Yeah. The focus is off managing the risk onto this very detailed specification that you're looking at. It's madness. One thing we talk about a lot on this podcast is the regulator and their influence on these things. And I think they, I mean, of course, frameworks, they have a huge influence here, and I've seen it in my working history, where they will literally come in and say, you're missing this from your framework. Not, hey, we've looked at your risk culture, we've seen how you make decisions, we've watched the way the board operates, and we think you're missing this from your risk culture. You're not, this behavior is lacking in your environment. No, no, no. A line is missing from your framework laying this out. And it's the framework is a substitute for a well-functioning risk culture, which is which
Yeah.
is kind of crazy.
You know, you give me a good risk culture with complete chaos in terms of framework and policy.
Yeah.
And that is, I argue, 999 times out of 1,000, that is going to be the better risk managed culture than a culture with a very rigid, world class
Yeah.
risk management framework and policy manual, but
Yeah.
a bad attitude or bad culture towards risk, and it's going to be a disaster
Yeah.
999 times out of 1,000.
Yeah.
On the regulators, you have to understand, and the what we've been saying about risk frameworks falls into this, is regulators have a very different incentive for risk management than organizations.
Yeah.
Okay. And when your incentive is different, uh, your mindset, and you're right, that different incentive has designed the risk frameworks, which at best are horrible. So if what I actively suggest to several of my clients is that you kind of think like an accountant when it comes to risk management and risk frameworks. So in
Mhm.
accounting, of course, GAAP accounting or IFRS or whatever accounting rules your organization is working under, yes, you have a set of accounting statements. But virtually every serious organization has three accounting statements. one for, their accredited accounting policy,
Yeah.
one for their tax, and one for managing the business.
Right. Yeah.
Because, the accounting for, public reporting has different objectives and different needs than accounting for tax, and none of them have the accounting that you need to manage a business.
Right.
And I believe that we need something very similar in risk management. So, yes, you can do the regulatory framework stuff, but have your own risk management framework for managing the business.
Right.
No CFO of a serious company is going to run their company based off their publicly reported statements. Now,
Yeah.
yes, there's going to be people talking about managing earnings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get that. But
Yeah.
in terms of day-to-day managing working capital, et cetera, you're not using your accounting statements. You're using
Yeah.
your managerial accounting statements,
Yeah.
which are a different deal.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, One final point that I'll just put in here, and again, I'm rambling on here, which is always a bad thing. But where's the upside in risk frameworks? All the risk frameworks. Yes, COSO actually does explicitly, if you read very carefully between the lines with a magnifying glass, does does acknowledge that there might be an upside to risk. But the way that risk frameworks are implemented in virtually every organization that I've been involved with, either as an employee or as a consultant or whatever framework, or whatever framework, in whatever mode,
Yeah.
um, the risk framework's been focused on the downside.
Yeah.
And the true value add of a risk management um, process should be, in my opinion, not only managing the downside, but also managing the upside. There's
Yeah.
risk on the upside. There's uncertainty on the upside. There's volatility on the upside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if everything that you do is only focused on the downside, well, guess what? You're going to hit downside, because the first thing they teach you in racing school is look where you want to go, not where you're actually going.
Yeah.
And if all you're looking at is bad things happening, then only bad things are going to happen, and you're going to miss all the wonderful opportunities as an organization that come your way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's something to get right from the ground up, from the framework through behaviors and your conversations with management. I mean, you can't just have a downside looking framework and then in management meetings say, well, there's upside to risk too. I mean, you lose
Yeah,
credibility, right? I mean,
and that's exactly it for the organizations that do manage upside risk. Is you'll have the risk management portion of the board meeting, for instance, just as an instance, and there'll be 30 minutes scheduled for it, and 27 minutes will be on all the stuff that's disastrous, and it'll be a 3 minute. Yeah, we have some upside risks that we're thinking of managing.
yeah, very balanced.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, okay, let's not give too much away. For people who want to read the article, you've got to come to PRMIA Intelligent Risk. And I think this will be a good opportunity to show off our new public discussion group as well, where authors like Rick post their risk insights on a weekly basis and try to get conversations going around these topics on a more frequent basis than intelligent risk, which is quarterly. So I'll put in a link to that in this post so people can join. Rick, until next time, it's been good chatting.
Have
Cheers.
fun, everyone. Let's go out and increase our risk appetite.